It is Sunday, the 20th of May, 2018, and I'm just in the middle of celebrating 20 years of protesting against Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse and other Unitarian Universalist injustices, abuse, and hypocrisy outside the Unitarian Church of Montreal today. So getting a little stare here from a low and a tongue sticking out too. That's pretty good. Yeah. Yeah, it's hilarious. Unitarians covering up child sex abuse. Yeah, stick your tongue out. Well done, sir. So yeah, this young man, who I don't recognize, not a familiar face, kind of stuck his tongue out at me. Obviously dismissing my protest, or at least expressing disapproval, because I don't think he's Peruvian and saying hello. So anyhow, the woman is someone who has been a long time member of the Unitarian Church of Montreal. We got another one coming this way, and she was basically like a public witness during the first criminal trial that I had to go through as a result of Montreal Unitarians misusing the Canadian Criminal Code in an effort to force an end to my protest outside the church. In December of 2000, I was arrested for the alleged violation of Section 176.3 of the Canadian Criminal Code, which prohibits disrupting the order and solemnity of religious services. This was as a result of, I believe, pressure put on the police by Jeremy Searle, Montreal City Councillor, longtime Montreal City Councillor. He wrote letters to the police demanding that they do something to end my protest, and then so they, in December of 2000, arrested me for, violating a law which prohibits disrupting church services. So unfortunately, that law is generally intended to prohibit, an actual disruption of the church service, as a rule by someone who's inside the building, not outside. And as we can see here, the church, sanctuary, there's basically no windows that can even see my protest, and I'm pretty quiet. I'm not even as loud as that bus. If that bus is making more noise than I am, I'm not here with a megaphone and so on. So I just got a little signal from the cyclist who thought one of my picket signs might be intruding a little bit on the bike lane, which it might have been, but it wasn't like blocking it or anything. But he wanted unlimited unobstruction, which is fine. I just stepped aside. Yeah, I think it might have been sticking in about 6 inches or something. Anyway, he had plenty of room. Could have easily just moved. But, I don't mind, if really that's fair, like if he wants me to step back so there's zero, intrusion of the picket sign into the bike lane, that's, fine by me. It is, after all, his bike lane. So, but on the other hand, you're on the sidewalk, and you can't help but block a certain amount of the sidewalk. That's another thing where the SPVM, actually on repeated occasions, they've used the pretext of claims, that I'm blocking the sidewalk. Well, I'm just one other person on the sidewalk. Yes, I got a couple of picket signs in my hand, and if I hold them out on either side, as I usually do, basically, they do cover the whole sidewalk. But, I keep my eyes open. I see when people are coming, and when they're coming, I pull in the picket signs, step aside, so there's no actual obstruction of the sidewalk. But that's just, another of the ways that Montreal Unitarians and the SPVM have tried to, limit my protest or even force an end to it by ticketing me into oblivion. Thankfully, they haven't been able to do that either. But anyway, getting back to the whole disrupting the order and solemnity of church services thing. You know, to make a long story short, I was acquitted when the Crown prosecutor couldn't prove a single one of the 4 or 5 points of law that he had to prove beyond reasonable doubt to obtain a conviction. I've gone into much more detail about that in the past, but you know, I want to stick to the origins of the protest today. And the only reason I even started up the camera again so soon after it was overheating was because I saw one recognizable Montreal Unitarian coming this way, and I thought there might be some kind of interaction I wanted recorded, so that's why I started up again. And I got the guy sticking his tongue out at me, so I did get a reaction, but not from the person I was expecting or thinking I might get a reaction from. Oh, she did sort of glare at me. She did sort of like give me a good solid stare for a while. Hopefully she was reading my picket signs, but I don't think so. I don't think, you know, she's had plenty of opportunity to read my picket signs over the last 17, 18 plus years, because she, as I said, was, that's how I got onto the whole, you know, disrupting the church services criminal charge. She was a public witness during the trial, which means that she wasn't a witness for the prosecution like Jeremy Searle and Valmir Bourdon. She came as, you know, a member of the public to observe the trial. So that goes back to 2000, 2001, 2002, and even perhaps early 2003. You know, there were several court dates before I was acquitted. In fact, the first court date got pushed down the road until, I believe, November 1st of, I think, 2002, if I'm not mistaken. Might have been 2001, but let's see here. Ding-ka-dang. No, I'm pretty sure it's 2002. Anyway, it was November 1st, either 2001, which I don't think is actually the case. Pretty sure it wasn't 2001. 2002, that was the first actual trial date. There had been one or two court appearances, you know, to plead not guilty and this and that. But the trial itself didn't get started until November 1st of, I'm quite sure, 2002. Might have been 2001, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't. You know, again, we're going from, you know, memory here. I haven't like looked at the documents recently and so on and so forth. I haven't refreshed my memory, but it was definitely November 1st. I remember that because the original trial date, the original trial date was supposed to be February, and that would have been February of 2002. Yeah, so we're definitely talking 2002. Good morning, thank you. So yeah, we're talking 2002, February. Can't remember the exact date for that, but that was the first trial date, had been fixed for February. And just before going to trial, just a few days before, I got a subpoena to come to the court. And the reason I got the subpoena to come to the court is because one of the 3 prosecution witnesses, whose name I don't remember, but it wasn't Valmir Bourdon or Jeremy Searle, it was the other guy who never actually ended up testifying. But anyway, he had some kind of like, you know, operation or some other medical thing that prevented him from being a prosecution witness at the, you know, time set for the trial to begin in February of 2002. So they asked for a postponement of the date, and the only date that worked out for everyone was November 1st, and I remember that clearly because November 1st, as people may recall, is All Saints Day, if I'm not mistaken, or is it All Souls Day? Either way, it was propitious date for the first trial date, and I remarked upon that in the court when the date was set by the judge. So yes, we're definitely talking 2002. Did the math here, and yeah, so it was November 1st, 2002, the first trial date, and then I believe there was a second one in the spring of 2003 because we weren't able to complete things the first time, if I remember correctly. And then there was supposed to be a third trial date for the defense. Not that I needed to present a defense, but I wanted to and asked to, but it was not necessary because the Crown prosecutor threw in the towel when he was unable to prove the points of law he needed to prove. He wanted me to make a motion of non-suit, which is essentially a motion to the court which asked the judge to just throw everything out because the prosecution failed to prove its case and is not even necessary to present a defense. But I wanted to present a defense because I wanted to show how Jeremy Searle and Valmir Bourdon and various other Montreal Unitarians had clearly misused and abused the Canadian Criminal Code in an effort to shut down a peaceful public protest against clergy abuse. I wanted to show that in my defense. Unfortunately, what happened is without my knowledge, the Crown prosecutor went a few days after the early spring 2003 court date. I think it was in April sometime. So a few days later, without my knowledge, he called for an acquittal and the judge granted it. So I never got the opportunity to present a defense, which is unfortunate because I could have really shown, just how shamefully Valmir Bourdon and especially Jeremy Searle, who clearly pressured the police. I believe he misused his influence as a city councillor to get the police to arrest me. I could have shown this in a defense, but I never got to present that defense. So anyway, yeah, so this is the early history of my protest. So as I said, it began originally as a result of not only Reverend Ray Drennan and other leading members of the Unitarian Church of Montreal slandering me and libeling me and engaging in various kinds of intolerance and bigotry and so on, but also as a result of the church locally and also the Unitarian Universalist Association essentially doing absolutely nothing to deal responsibly with the intolerance and bigotry of Ray Drennan, etc., and blaming the victim, which is the usual thing that happens in clergy misconduct cases. Is you bring a complaint against the minister, and instead of dealing with the problems with the minister, the church locally and sometimes also the head office, they basically blame the victim. They do everything they can to whitewash the minister and paint the complainant as a troublemaker and so on. And so essentially what happens is the complainant gets ostracized and shunned and maybe even officially kicked out of the church and so on, and maybe intimidated and bullied in various other ways. And the minister is pretty well absolved, doesn't face any kind of accountability. And of course, I'm not talking about just what happened here in Montreal. I'm talking about what happens, throughout not just the Unitarian Universalist religion, but also various other religious communities, including, of course, the Roman Catholic Church, which most people think of, when clergy abuse issues come to light. Everyone thinks of the Roman Catholic Church because its clergy abuse problems are very well publicized. But the fact of the matter is most, if not all, and really in real terms, it's pretty well every religious community. I mean, I'm not aware of a single religious community that has zero clergy misconduct problems, unless maybe they have zero clergy. But anyway, sorry, I couldn't resist that little poke. But nonetheless, everyone knows, about the Catholic Church and the lengths that it has gone to cover up and deny clergy abuse of all kinds, including some horrific sexual abuse of children. But very, very few people know that, pretty much the exact same thing or variations on the theme happen within the Unitarian Universalist religious community and various other religious communities, and not just Christian ones, you know, Jewish, Muslim, you name it. Buddhists have their own sexual misconduct problems too. You know, there's Buddhist monks and senseis and so on that have definitely engaged in various kinds of sexual abuse, sexual misconduct. So, you know, it's not limited to the Roman Catholic Church by any means, and the social dynamic is always very similar. The victim is badly treated after complaining, and the minister or rabbi or whatever term, you know, whichever type of clergy you want to talk about, you know, they're basically protected by the religious community, and the victim is shoved out and further victimized and so on. So yeah, that's a good thing to talk about this morning, and that's exactly what happened here. You know, I could go into all kinds of detail about how Montreal Unitarians failed miserably to respond in a responsible manner to my complaint about Reverend Ray Drennan, which could have been resolved by a formal retraction and an official apology in the early stages. You know, this could have been settled with an apology and a retraction that clearly acknowledged the wrongfulness and harmfulness of Ray Drennan's word, but that never happened. And the church never did anything to ensure that it happened. Instead, they kicked me out for insisting upon a proper apology. So anyhow, we'll just continue to circulate here. Thankful it hasn't started raining yet. Well, it's certainly looking gray. What? Sorry, I can't hear, but if you want to take a picture, be my guest. Yeah.
So how long have you been doing this?
It's interesting. It's a very good question, because believe it or not, today, or this month, is the 20th anniversary.
20th anniversary?
Yeah, 1998, May 9th.